Hey, this is Jessica with Food Foundation, and in this video, I'm going to show you how to take bone broth and turn it into a delicious Tom Kha Gai. Tom Kha Gai is a Thai soup, and basically all I'm doing is trying to change the flavor profile of my bone broth all the time so that I can take the same healthy bone broth but make new recipes. In this one, I'm going to use chicken. So this is about 3 to 5 pounds of chicken bones from Bogline Farm, one of the many farms that I love that's local and has pasture-raised chicken. It's really important to have lots of meaty bits left on the bones. So if you cooked a whole chicken, you want to make sure that you don't have to scrape every last bit of meat off. Just use the whole bone, meats, all of the collagen and everything on it. So we're going to put the bones into the slow cooker, and this one I'm going to let go maybe 8, 10, 12 hours, not too long. I want to be able to make it for dinner tonight. So the difference between a Tom Kha Gai and maybe a tomato soup or a ramen or whatever other broth you're going to make is all about the flavors that you put in the beginning of your bone broth. So as I put the bones into the slow cooker, I'm going to think about adding flavors that are going to end up tasting like a Thai soup. I'm going to think about lemongrass. Now I'm going to cut the lemongrass because every time it's cut through, it's going to give that flavor and release a little bit more of the oils from the plant. Also, lemongrass is easier to find, but kaffir lime leaves. Now I'm lucky because one of my neighbors has a kaffir lime tree. Not lucky to use the limes. They're wrinkly, like little wrinkly balls that are beautiful and you can't eat them at all. They're super disgusting. But they make these leaves that a lot of times are used in Thai food to give a beautiful flavor. Now you can find these at an Asian market, but if you're in quarantine and you're not able to get to one, find the lemongrass or even just squeeze lime at the end. These are all just optional. You don't need every single flavor here. 2 to 3 of your favorites are going to give you a delicious broth. Other things we can use are ginger, chilies. We want to try to use maybe a little dried Thai red chili. Thai red chilies are really hot. So these dried ones don't get quite as hot because unless I crush them with my fingers and release all the seeds, they're just going to give a little bit of that flavor. I can use the cilantro stems, so I'm definitely going to chop up the cilantro leaves, the beautiful part in the top of the soup, or when the soup is finished, but these stems can give a nice flavor and then none of my cilantro goes to waste. And of course we can use green onion. I always like to use an onion in my broth. If I have a white onion or a shallot or leek, any of those would be fine. But green onion also are, because I'm not cooking it for too long, they're gonna make a nice flavor in the broth. And of course, mushrooms. Mushrooms give a great umami flavor, and they also have a lot of immune boosting benefits. So it's really wonderful to put mushrooms into your broth, especially if you have kids that don't like to eat mushrooms because of the texture, like I do. But you can sneak in the dried mushroom and get a lot of the benefits into the broth, and then they won't notice the texture so much. So I'm going to plop all of these into the broth, boil it at a low simmer for about 8 to 10 hours, and then put together a Tom Kha Gai. So the very cool thing about a Tom Kha Gai is, again, we're making bone broth, and then this is just like ramen. It's just all of the things that you can add to the end. So I added a whole can of coconut milk to this big pot of soup. I would say it's about a quart. You know, it's all to taste. So whenever you're adding in ingredients, just taste as you go. You can always add more, but you can never take away. So as you're going along and adding in the coconut milk and the lime and all of the flavors that you decide, you want to taste as you go to make sure it's not too salty, not too hot, not too acidic. Remember, we're adding the salt. It's more salt than you think, at least 1 to 2 teaspoons for this amount of soup. Yeah, about 2 teaspoons for a quart. Now when we add the lime, we're adding the acid. Remember, you're always trying to balance the salt, the acid, the fat. The heat, this will cut through the fattiness of the broth. And then we want to add a little bit of heat. So we'll add the jalapeno. Remember, if you add the jalapeno in the beginning, you're blending the oils of the chili all over everything and you're gonna have heat throughout. But when you just add them in the end, you're getting a little bit of heat here and there, and you can actually avoid it if they're too hot for you. I'm going to add in mushroom. Tom Kha Gai usually has mushroom, and it's what I have on hand. I happen to have these beautiful tree oyster mushrooms, and they're going to be nice and light, like a button mushroom. So we'll add some slices of those. If you had cooked chicken or cooked pork, you could add shrimp. That would be lovely too. Clams, think like a little clam chowdery almost, and then some fresh green onion. One of the easiest things you can do to these bone broths is always add fresh herbs at the very end, and it just gives it a really fresh taste. For this Tom Kha Gai, you definitely want to do cilantro and definitely some Thai basil. This is a super easy way to turn your bone broth into a Thai flavored Tom Kha Gai. If you like this video, hit the like button and share it with your friends. And be sure to subscribe so you get all my videos as soon as they're released. Thanks for watching.